Hi, third graders. Today we are continuing to work on our graphing unit for math, and we are still working on line plots. So remember, a line plot it kind of looks like a number line, right? And then we label our points on it or our measurements on it, and then we have X's that represent how many of that measurement or whatever it is that there is. Okay. So our I can statement for today is I can create a line plot based on data given. So this is a little bit different today. We're taking it up another step in that today we are actually, well, the line plot is started for us, but we are plotting all of our X's on that line plot. We're actually making that line plot. We're putting the data on the line plot. So kind of fun for today. Okay. So we have all of our data here, all of our measurements, and then we're going to be plotting them here. So today for materials, you need your lesson 7 problem set, name and date, of course. You need a pencil, and then you need a highlighter for those clue words that tell us what to do with our measurements. Okay, so when you're ready, you can join me. So put your finger, your pencil, right at the beginning on Mrs. Weiss's, and will you read this with me? Okay, here we go. Mrs. Weiss's class grows beans for a science experiment. The students measure the heights of their bean plants to the nearest 1/4 inch and record the measurements as shown below. So we have this chart here with all of our data that we're going to plot. And the title of this chart is Heights of Bean Plants in Inches. So let's go ahead and highlight that because that's important because that tells us what we're dealing with. So this chart is showing us the heights of bean plants. So again, Mrs. Weiss's class is they planted bean plants, and then they measure the heights of their bean plants to the nearest 1/4 inch. So that's what all of these are. These are the measurements of those bean plants in inches. And then it says for A, use the data to complete the line plot below. So we need to give our line plot a title. So basically we just take our title right from here, right? So the title of this data is going to become the title for our line plot. So we're going to write heights of bean plants. And we want to capitalize what they capitalize. They have all the important parts capitalized already. So all we need to do is copy that. So heights of bean plants. And we don't need to write the in inches part in our title. That is what we are actually going to use at the bottom where it says label. We're going to write inches because that tells us, if we remember, we could actually turn back to, let's see here. Oh, I'm not even in one that I've already used. But in some of the previous pages that we've done of our packet, I just pulled out a new packet today. We actually have labeled, or it's already been labeled at the bottom for us if we're measuring in inches or whatever it is that we're measuring with. So that's inches. And then this is a really important part, right? This X, what do these X's represent? So in the past, the X has always represented one of something. So X equals 1. What are these X's representing? So if we look the heights of bean plants, these are the heights. So an X equals 1 bean plant. So each X that we plot is going to represent a bean plant. So how many bean plants are 1 3/4 inches? We'll know when we look through our data, and then we'll put the X there. How many are 2 inches, 2 1/4, and so on. Okay. So once we have that set up, the next part is really the fun part. Let me just make this a little bit higher. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take each measurement and we're going to so for the first one is 2 1/4. So all I do is come down here and find 2 1/4, and then I put a little X. Okay. And then I'm going to cross that off. Crossing it off is really important so we know that we have already plotted that point so we don't plot it twice, and also so we don't forget to plot something. When we have a lot of measurements here, so we want to be careful that we get them all onto our line plot. Okay, so the next one is 1 3/4, and that's right here. So we're going to put an X. We want to make sure that our X is the same size as this one here and that it's lined right up. Same thing when we've done our picture graphs, we make sure that our symbols are lined up, so they should be the same size and they should be both the same height. Cross it off. The next one is 2 inches. So I find 2 and I put a little X and I cross it off. 2.5 right here. Put a little X and I cross it off. The biggest thing here that kids often make mistakes is that they don't plot everything, or we forget something, or they plot it twice because they forget to cross it off. So one way that we could kind of combat that and make sure we don't do it is after we finish a column, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 crossed off, and I can check here 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm good. That's just an extra check for me. So let's do a column and then we'll check and make sure that we have that many X's on our line plot. Okay, so the next one is 2 3/4. So here's 2 3/4. Put an X, cross it off. The next one is 3. Here's 3. Put an X, cross it off. 2 1/4. Here's 2 1/4. So this is the first time that we're going to have 2 on one. So I'm just going to leave a little space and make sure my X is the same size there. So there's 2 1/4 and I cross it off. 3 1/4. Oh, this one down here gets one, finally. 3 1/4, and then cross it off. So now I have 4, 8 that I've done. So let me just double check and make sure that I have 8 X's on my line plot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Good. You check yours too and make sure that you have 8 so far. And then if you want to pause your video, you can finish these up on your own, or you can just kind of work right along with me and listen to me in the background, okay? 3 1/4 is the next one, so I'm going to put an X there and cross it off. Make sure we're working carefully, right? 2.5, put an X, cross it off. 3, put an X, cross it off. 1 3/4, it's right here. Put an X, cross it off. You want to make sure that so now we have a lot that have 2 in it. So I want to make sure that if they have 2, that all of the 2s are lined up, right? If I have make some really big X's, it might, for 1 3/4, it would look like this would be more, but really it should be the same as these other ones that have 2. That's why it's important that our symbol is the same size. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So that would be 4, 8, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm good. Make sure you do a check too after each column. 1 3/4 right here. Now that one has 3. 3 1/4 is at the end. Make sure this one is lined up with this one. 2 1/4. Again, make sure this has 3. Make sure it's lined up with that one right there. 2 3/4 right here. Okay, and I finished a column, so I want to check. So I've got 4, 8, 12, 16 X's I should have now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I'm good, so make sure that you're good too. And then my last column, 1 3/4. 2.5. 3 and 2. I finished off, I've got 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. So I should have 20 X's, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I have 20. Check and make sure that you have 22. Isn't that kind of fun? Taking all that data and then we get to plot the X's for it, okay? So if we have 20 X's, how many bean plants do we have? 20 bean plants, right? So these X's, each of the X's represents a bean plant. So if we have 20 X's, that means that we're representing 20 bean plants of all different heights on there. I'm going to rip this page right out of my packet because the back is talking about the measurements from the front. So we're going to have to be flipping back and forth a lot. So if you want to rip it right out, that might make it easier for you. If it is in a packet, if yours is in a packet. Alrighty, so this is where a highlighter comes in handy. So it says how many bean plants are at least 2 1/4 inches tall? How many bean plants are at least 2 1/4 inches tall? At least 2 1/4 inches tall. So if it says at least 2 1/4 inches, So here's 2 1/4 inches. So if they are at least 2 1/4 inches tall, that means that they're this height or higher. So how many are at least 2 1/4 inches tall? So that means we would include this amount and then everything past that. Okay. If they're at least 2 1/4 inches tall, that would be the shortest they would be is 2 1/4 inches and then higher. So to find that out, once we kind of mark off the ones that would be 2 1/4 inches tall or more, we can count our X's, right? So 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 14 bean plants. We'll just give that a label. How many bean plants are at least 2 1/4 inches tall? 14 bean plants. Okay. Are you ready for C? Okay. C says, how many plants are taller? I'm going to highlight that. How many plants are taller than 2 3/4 inches? So 2 3/4 is what I'm looking at. How many are taller than 2 3/4? So I definitely want to look up there because it's all mixed up. I want to look down here. So how many are taller than 2 3/4? So here's 2 3/4. And I want to know how many bean plants are taller than 2 3/4. So we would be counting past this way, right? Am I going to count 2 3/4? How many are taller than 2 3/4? So we don't count 2 3/4, right? Because it wants to know how many are taller than 2 3/4. It doesn't say how many are 2 3/4 or taller. So how many are taller than 2 3/4? That means we're just looking at this data here. So we'll circle that just to kind of make it stand out from the other. So how many bean plants are taller than 2 3/4? So that would be bean plants that are 3 inches and 3 1/4. So we have 3 and 3. So that means we have 6 bean plants are taller than 2 3/4 inches. So 6 bean plants. What do you think so far? You doing okay? Good. All right. Join me looking at D. And if you're finishing up with the above, then you can pause it. Okay. So for D, put your finger, your pencil right on what? Okay. D says, what is the most frequent measurement? We had this yesterday, I think, or our last lesson, frequent. So that means like which measurement is on there the most. So which one has the most X's. So what is the most frequent measurement? How many bean plants were plotted for this measurement? So the most frequent, that means the one with the most. So take a look at our line plot and you tell me which one is the most frequent measurement. Which one has the most? I know what I think. What do you think? Do you think that it's 1 3/4 inches? Yeah. I can look at it and see, because I have my X's equally spaced out, I can see that 1 3/4 is the highest. That's why it's important that we have our X's the same size and the same space in between, because then I can see that that one's the highest. But then also just looking, I see that 1 3/4 has 4 X's. This has 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 3. So 1 3/4 has the most because it has 4. So we can turn it back over. So what is the most frequent measurement? So 1 3/4 inches. Remember those two little lines like that, they're like quotation marks, represents inches. I want to make sure that my 1 is as big as the 3/4 because I have 1 whole and 3/4, just like when we did our fractions, right? So 1 3/4 inches, and then how many bean plants are plotted for this measurement? I think it was 4, right? Yes. So 1 3/4, we'll just put a dash and we'll do 4 bean plants. So when I asked what was the most frequent measurement, it's 1 3/4 inches, and that had 4 bean plants. Alrighty. Ready to join me for E? Okay. So put your finger, your pencil right on George and read it with me. George says that most of the bean plants are at least 3 inches tall. He says that most are at least 3 inches tall. Is he right? explain your answer. So explain means we need words. We'll write a sentence, right? So he says that most of the bean plants are at least 3 inches tall. Is he right? So let's look. He says most of them are at least 3 inches tall. So that means if he's saying that most are at least 3 inches tall, that most of our bean plants fall in this range here. Is that true? No, right? Because there's 6 bean plants that are at least 3 inches tall, but look at all these. There's a lot of bean plants that are not 3 inches tall, right? So how many bean plants are not 3 inches tall? Let's look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So there are 14. Let's scoop this for this part before 3 inches, and let's write 14 there. So there are 14 bean plants. We'll scoop it and put 14 to show that 14 bean plants are not 3 inches tall. And then we can scoop this side and we'll put 3 and 3 is 6. 6 bean plants are at least 3 inches tall. So this really helps us to see, are most bean plants at least 3 inches tall? No, because there's 14 bean plants that are not, right? So let's start it back over. So he says most bean plants are at least 3 inches tall. Is he right? No, George is very wrong. So no, comma, and we can say there are 14 bean plants less, right? They're less than 3 inches. We'll do the 2 little lines there to represent inches. No, comma, there are 14 bean plants less than 3 inches tall, comma, and 6 bean plants three inches or taller. Okay, so while you finish writing that, I'll read it again. So no, comma, make sure you have a capital letter because we wrote a complete sentence for this one. So no, comma, there are 14 bean plants less than 3 inches tall and 6 bean plants 3 inches or taller. So that goes with what we put on the other side. We scooped it. We said 14 were less than 3 inches. And then when we found the other side, there were 6 that were at least 3 inches or taller. Alrighty, so if you need to pause to finish that up, you can do that, and I'm going to start on F. So put your finger or your pencil on F for Savannah and read with me, please. Savannah was absent the day the class measured the heights of their bean plants. When she returns, her plant measures 2 2/4 inches tall. So 2 2/4 inches tall is the height of Savannah's plant. Can Savannah plot the height of her bean plant on the class plot? Why or why not? So we're going to have to write a sentence there, right? So her bean plant is 2 2/4. So we want to look and see where we could put 2 2/4. So let's flip it. Do you see 2 2/4 on there? So we're trying to put, I'll stick it over here, 2 2/4 is the height of Savannah's. Do you see that on there? 1 3/4, 2, 2 1/4, 2 1/2, 2 3/4, 3, 3 1/4. So it would have to go somewhere in here where I have the 2's for my whole numbers, right? 2 1/4, 2 1/2, 2 3/4. There's no 2 2/4 there. So can she not put her bean plant on there? Or is there a fraction there that is the same amount as 2 2/4? Let's look. 2 1/4. Would 2 2/4 be the same as 2 1/4? 2 1/2. 2 3/4. Well, it's definitely not 2 3/4. But let's look. 2 1/2. Let me write that right above here. 2 1/2. So let me not even pay attention to those 2's right there. Let me look at the fractions. So let's look at 1/2. I'll stick it up here. 1/2 and 2/4. Are those equal? Are those equivalent? Yeah, we got a half, and 2/4 is also equal to a half, right? 2 is half of 4. Also, if we think we've got 1/4, this would be 2/4, and then we have 3/4. I could butterfly also to check. 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 4 is 4. So those are equivalent. Okay, but also just as long as I know that we have a half and 2/4 is equal to a half because 2 is half of 4, right? So could she plot her bean plant? Yeah, it would go at 2 1/2 because 2 1/2 is the same thing as 2 2/4. And really, we're just paying attention to those fractions there. Can Savannah plot the height of her bean plant on the class line plot? Yes, comma, because 2 2/4 equals 2 1/2. Okay, and let's circle those fractions there because 2/4 is equal to a half. The 2's are the same, so really we're just paying attention to those fractions there. Okay, that one was a little bit tricky, right? So we had to think a little harder on that one. That's okay. All right, boys and girls, so that is our lesson for today on line plots. Super job, and I will see you tomorrow for some more fractions.